Hello, this is Irina K and welcome back to my channel AstroBabushka. I'm a Vedic astrologer and I apply ancient, more than 3,000 years old knowledge to modern times. Yes, I do use outer planets, sometimes asteroids, comets, and astrocartography as well. And this is the second part of monthly video for all rising signs in November. So let's get into this. For Aries rising, November 2025 becomes a month of inner testing, a slow turning of the wheel between desire, control, and trust. Every planet involved touches a psychological area, not a superficial one. Here's my progression. Mercury stations retrograde November 9 in Scorpio in your 8th house. This begins in the most private zone of the chart. Mercury turning backward in Scorpio pulls you into your own depth psychology, shared resources as well, fears and entanglements. Matters of inheritance, intimacy, or debt require review. Conversations that were hidden or avoided may return. Because this happens in 8th house, logic alone cannot fix what surfaces. It demands emotional honesty. Now, Jupiter stations direct November 11th, stations retrograde in Cancer in your 4th house. So only 2 days later, after the Mercury stations, Jupiter, your 9th and 12th house ruler, pauses at the threshold of Cancer, the house of home and roots. It suggests spiritual reflection through emotional memory. You may reevaluate family roles, belonging, or where your true sanctuary lies. Because it's between two signs, or we call it in Vedic astrology Sandhi, sitting on the edge between Gemini and Cancer shows that the past and future are both speaking now. You must decide which voice to follow, probably to follow both. New moon at 4 degrees Scorpio, November 11 to 12, conjoins Mercury and the Sun at the same degree, a Kazimi moment, and it also opposes Uranus in Taurus. For Aries rising, this electrifies 8th second house axis, transformation versus stability, shared versus earned values. The Kazimi brings a brief moment of razor-sharp awareness within the fog of retrograde motion. Something hidden becomes clear. There's aha moment, a truth about power, vulnerability, or financial dependence. Uranus and Taurus may shake income or possessions, forcing you to adapt quickly. Saturn stations direct November 28 in 0 degree Pisces, also Sunday in your 12th house. So, whatever felt suspended since midsummer now begins to move forward, particularly matters of isolation, retreat, subconscious patterning, or as well some internet or can be internet project as well, startup. It can also bring conclusions in institutional or foreign settings, something regarding visas, hospitals, large organizations. And because it stations in Sandhi at 0 degree Pisces, so endings and beginnings overlap. You may feel both release and weight at once. Synthesis for Aries rising, November functions as a psychological corridor. The 8th house retrograde Mercury makes you face what is unspoken. The 4th house retrograde Jupiter reopens emotional foundations. The 12th house stations Saturn calls for closure and responsibility. You're moving through water signs. Scorpio, Cancer, Pisces, all testing emotional intelligence and faith. So this month asks for silence more than action, to listen beneath reaction, to translate restlessness into understanding. The combination of Mercury's retrograde in Scorpio and Saturn's direct motion in Pisces forms a bridge between inner confession and spiritual maturity. If handled consciously, November becomes a month of purification before expansion, a clearing of psychological debris that prepares you for the decisive forward momentum of early 2026. Okay, now will be Taurus rising. And mirror held up to your closest bonds, personal, professional, and karmic. The fixed signs are under pressure and you stand right at the center of it. Here's how the sequence can unfold. Mercury stations retrograde November 9 in Scorpio in your 7th house. So partnership becomes the focal point at this time. Mercury turning retrograde here reopens conversations, contracts, or misunderstandings in one-to-one relations. Whether in marriage, business, or diplomacy, what has been said must be re-examined. Scorpio adds emotional intensity, so communication feels probing, maybe not even polite. Expect to revisit decisions made in late October. Now, Jupiter stations retrograde November 11th, 0 degree Cancer, happens in your 3rd house. So 2 days later, Jupiter, your 8th and 11th Lord, pauses on the border between Gemini and Cancer. In the 3rd house, this turns attention towards speech, writing, negotiations. Jupiter's Sunday position suggests the tone of communication is changing. You are learning to balance intellect with empathy. It can also bring distance from siblings or neighbors as a perspectives shift. New moon at 4 degrees Scorpio, November 11 to 12, happens in your 7th house, directly opposing Uranus and Taurus. So for you, these lights are relationship axis, self, 1st house versus 7th house, others. A partner or opponent may act unpredictably because of Uranus, forcing you to define your independence without severing connection. The Kazimi, however, gives you one sharp flash of insight, an aha moment. You understand the deeper motive behind another person's actions or your own reason for holding on. This lunation resets the emotional contract, not by ending it, but by rewriting its terms. Saturn stations direct November 28th, 0 Pisces, 11th house. Saturn direct motion in your 11th house clarifies your social roles, alliances, and long-term goals. Since June, some friendships or collective efforts have felt stagnant. So now the dust settles, you begin to see who truly stands with you. And because it happens at 0 degree Pisces, the border of signs, old networks fade while new alliances can start to form, especially those tied to humanitarian or creative ideals. Synthesis for Taurus rising November tests your balance between partnership and self-definition through partnerships. Mercury retrograde in Scorpio asks for emotional truth. In relationships, Jupiter pause at the gate of Cancer reteaches honest dialogue. The new moon opposite Uranus jolts you awake from a little dream. Saturn direct turn steadies your long-term vision, reminding you that loyalty must serve growth, not control. The month may bring temporary instability, shifting dynamics, sudden revelations, but beneath it lies a quiet reconstruction of trust and maybe some foundation shifting. By the time Saturn moves firmly forward in December, you will know which bonds are karmically sound and which belong to the past. Now, next will be Gemini rising. Gemini rising, November 2025, is a month of inward turn, when the pace of daily life slows and the unseen mechanics of mind, health, and belief begin to shift. Each station touches a house of service, meaning, or transition. Mercury stations retrograde November 9th in Scorpio in your 6th house, and your ruling planet pauses in the 6th house of work, discipline, and health. This is Mercury's own territory of analysis, but Scorpio deepens it with intensity and secrecy. Issues at work or with colleagues may resurface. You might need to fix what has been ignored, scheduling, communication, or even physical well-being. The retrograde invites you to clean up routines, not just projects. Jupiter stations retrograde in November 11 in 0° Cancer, and it is 2nd house for you. Jupiter, lord of your 7 and 10 houses, turns inward at the border of Gemini and Cancer. This occurs in your 2nd house, the domain of speech, earnings, and family resources. You may reassess what security really means for you. Financial strategies or career values are redefined. Because Jupiter governs your professional sphere, reflection rather than expansion is wise now. Patience brings better results later. Now, new moon at 4° Scorpio, November 11 to 12, and it's happening also Cazimi there in a 6th house. This new moon joins Mercury and the Sun in exact Cazimi, opposite Uranus in Taurus. This creates a sudden illumination in the 6-12 house axis. Work versus rest, control versus surrender. Something hidden in a daily affairs or health becomes visible. A revelation at work may change your schedule, team, or method. Uranus in 12th house can bring unexpected disruptions through technology or confidential information. Still, the Cazimi gives a flash of clarity, an aha moment, how to simplify, purify, and regain control over the chaos. November 28th, Saturn stations direct 0° Pisces, and it is 10th house in your chart. And this is, I would say, stabilizing moment, because Saturn's direct turn in your 10th house of career and authority. And it begins to re-anchor your public role. Projects delayed since summer can now progress, though slowly. It's time for measured, mature decisions about long-term directions. At 0° Pisces, Saturn asks you what kind of structure will serve your calling for the next 2 to 3 years. So, synthesis for Gemini rising. November revolves around service, speech, and purpose, the invisible architecture of your daily life. Mercury retrograde reorders habits and restores efficiency. Jupiter retrograde questions the motives behind your ambitions. The new moon, opposite Uranus, breaks stagnation in routine and health. Saturn's direct motion in your 10th house reestablishes control after months of slowdown. The pattern is one of purification through responsibility. Your task is to refine how you serve, not only in your job, but in the way you communicate and contribute meaningfully. By December, a more disciplined rhythm will emerge, built on awareness rather than obligation. Next will be Cancer rising, and November 2025 carries deep emotional movement for you, the kind that reshapes both your creative core and your outer direction. Every planetary station touches the water signs, drawing you back into the feeling world before you step forward again. Mercury stations retrograde November 9 in Scorpio, and it is your fifth house. Mercury retrograde in your fifth house turns focus towards self-expression, romance, and children. Scorpio adds secrecy and intensity, so past feelings or creative projects may resurface. Conversations of the heart may require reinterpretation. What was once playful now feels serious. Use this retrograde to edit, refine, and understand the motives behind your desires. Jupiter stations retrograde November 11th, 0° Cancer. It's your first house. Jupiter, your 6th and 9th lord, stations in the very first degree of your sign, the gateway between Gemini and Cancer. And in the first house, this signals as introspective pause in identity. You may feel called to retreat or reassess your direction. Because Jupiter rules your 9th house of faith and philosophy, the question becomes, what principles truly define me? The Sun deposition suggests that you are between versions of yourself, one still shedding and one being born. Next, new moon at 4° Scorpio happens November 11 to 12 in the 5th house with Cazimi, where Mercury right in the heart of the Sun, but directly opposing Uranus and Taurus. For you, this 5th to 11th house axis personal joy versus collective belonging. The Cazimi offers a brief window of brilliance, aha moment, sudden inspiration, or clear insight about love, children, or creative work. Yet, Uranus in the 11th house shakes social networks and friendships. Something shifts in how you relate to groups or audiences. The theme is liberation through self-expression. November 28th, Saturn stations direct at 0° Pisces in your 9th house, Cancer. Saturn directs motion in your 9th house regrounds your beliefs in future vision. Since midsummer, questions of education, travel, or spiritual conviction may have felt suspended. Now the compass begins to point forward again. At 0° Pisces, the station marks the start of a long period of practical idealism, applying faith to structure, turning philosophy into daily discipline. So synthesis for Cancer rising will be: November is an inner realignment between heart and belief, creation and purpose. Mercury retrograde reopens your emotional and creative channels. Jupiter retrograde in your sign calls for personal reflection before new expansion. The Scorpio new moon reveals what your heart truly wants, and Saturn's direct turn restores long-term vision and moral clarity. All four events move through water signs, binding you to your emotional, deep truth. You are completing an old story of identity that began in early 2025. And by December, clarity returns, gentler, wiser, and more grounded in what feels more authentically yours. Next, Leo rising, what November 2025 brings to you. It draws attention to your inner foundations, home, security, emotional truth, while testing how well you balance private life with public pressure. Each planetary shift occurs in a water sign, dissolving old attachments and clearing space for renewal. Mercury stations retrograde November 9 in Scorpio, and it is your 4th house. Mercury turns inward in your 4th house, the seat of emotional roots, property, and family. Scorpio's influence brings buried memories or domestic tensions to the surface. You may revisit a home-related decision, repair an emotional bond, or rethink where safety truly lies. The retrograde favors introspection over control. Listen, observe, and allow feelings to clarify your next step. November 11th, Jupiter stations retrograde at 0 degree Cancer, and it is your 12th house, Leo. And Jupiter, Lord of your 5th and 8th houses, pauses at the border of Gemini and Cancer, deep within your 12th house of solitude, endings, and the unconscious. This is a contemplative turning point. You may feel detached from outer ambitions, drawn instead toward study, retreat, or spiritual rest. It's time to absorb the meaning of recent events rather than seek new expansion. Inner generosity, forgiveness, release, surrender is the higher use of this transit. Now, November 11 to 12 will be new moon at 4 degrees Scorpio in your 4th house, and it is Cazimi. That means Mercury right in the heart of the sun, but opposing Uranus and Taurus. So for you, this activates your 4-10 house axis, home versus career, private life versus visibility. Sudden shifts may occur in professional direction or living situation, triggered by Uranus in your 10th house. Yet, the Cazimi offers clarity. It brings this aha moment. You see what must stabilize before you move forward. A family matter or inner revelation may change how you define success. November 28th. Saturn stations direct at 0 degree Pisces in your 8th house, Leo. Saturn's direct motion in your 8th house restarts processes that have been suspended since summer. Shared finances, psychological transformation, or commitments involving others. At 0 degree Pisces, endings and beginnings overlap. Emotional maturity grows for you through facing what cannot be controlled. This station strengthens endurance. Whatever has been uncertain begins to take form again. Synthesis for Leo rising will be: November moves through the deepest water in your chart. Mercury retrograde reopens emotional communication within family and home. Jupiter retrograde guides you toward introspection and spiritual cleansing, and the new moon opposite Uranus confronts you with change in professional or domestic spheres. Saturn's direct turn steadies shared responsibilities and long-term healing. The pattern is one of emotional integration, learning to feel without fear, to rebuild security on inner strength rather than external validation. By the end of the month, the ground beneath you becomes firmer, not because circumstances simplify, but because you understand your own foundations at last. Now, Virgo rising. November 2025 is a month of a quiet confrontation between thought and faith, between what you can reason through and what you must simply trust. The signs involved, Scorpio, Cancer, Pisces, all connect you to emotional and spiritual houses, asking you to loosen control and let deeper intuition lead. Mercury stations retrograde in November 9th in Scorpio in your 3rd house. Your ruling planet turns backward in the 3rd house of speech, writing, and mental rhythm. In Scorpio, this retrograde sharpens perception but adds emotional intensity. Old messages, conversations, or documents may reappear for review. You might need to revise travel plans or repair strained communication with a sibling or colleague. Because it's the third house, the mind is active, but Scorpio's tone demands honesty beneath politeness. Jupiter stations retrograde November 11, 0 degree Cancer in your 11th house, Virgo. And Jupiter, Lord of your 4th and 7th, pauses at the threshold of your 11th house of goals and alliances. At this Sunday point, you reassess what community means. Friendships or professional networks may feel in transition, some growing distant, some others deepening with purpose. It's a reflective time for hopes and ideals, which ambitions still carry meaning and which were borrowed from others. Now, new moon at 4 degrees Scorpio on November 11 to 12. Beautiful because it merges with Mercury in the heart of the sun, but in opposition to Uranus in Taurus. This brings a spark of insight across your 3rd to 9th house axis, your mind versus your worldview. A revelation of news may challenge a long-held belief. Travel, study, or legal matters could shift suddenly under Uranus influence. The Cazimi provides a moment of mental clarity amid confusion, a sort of aha moment, a truth, spoken or written, that changes perspective. So look for it. November 28, Saturn stations direct at 0 degree Pisces in your 7th house. Saturn's direct motion in your 7th house marks a turning point in partnerships and commitments. Since midsummer, relationships or contracts may have felt delayed or uncertain. Now they begin to solidify. At 0 degree Pisces, this station tests compassion and boundaries, learning how to support others without dissolving yourself. Synthesis for Virgo rising. November brings a sequence of mental and relational recalibrations. Mercury retrograde revises communication patterns. Jupiter retrograde questions your social and professional ideals. The Scorpio new moon awakens a new way of thinking. Saturn's direct turn defines partnership responsibilities. Everything points toward discernment, not quick judgment, but clarity born from patience. By the end of the month, you'll notice a quieter confidence in how you speak, choose allies, and structure your closest ties. The air clears, and what remains are commitments of mind, word, and heart that you can trust. Next will be Libra rising, and November 2025 turns attention to value, both material and emotional. The planets gather in your 2nd and 10th and 6th houses, forming a pattern of reassessment in money, work, and self-worth. This is a month to pause, simplify, and measure what truly sustains you. Mercury stations retrograde November 9 in Scorpio in your 2nd house. Mercury begins its backward motion in your 2nd house of income, resources, and speech. In Scorpio, this retrograde has a probing quality. It asks what you really rely on and whether your words match your worth. Finances may require review. Shared accounts or emotional attachments to money come into focus. Avoid quick purchases or promises. Think of this as an audit of value, not a punishment. November 11th, Jupiter stations retrograde at 0° Cancer at your 10th house. So Jupiter, ruler of your 3rd and 6th houses, turns retrograde right on the edge of Geminian Cancer and in your 10th house of career and reputation. Here, the planet of growth asks you to step back and reassess your professional direction. Old ambitions may lose appeal. You might seek deeper meaning in your work. Because it's Sunday, something from the past and something new will most likely overlap. A change of leadership, title, or public stance may begin forming quietly. November 11th will be new moon at 4° Scorpio, and it is your 2nd house. And here we have beautiful Kazimi moment. Mercury in the heart of the sun, but Uranus and Taurus opposing all this beautiful picture. This brings an intense reset in your 2nd to 8th house axis. What you own versus what you share. A financial partnerships, contract, or emotional exchange may shift suddenly. The Kazimi gives a flash of insight into what you value most. Uranus opposition reminds you that the true security never comes from control. And on November 28th, Saturn stations direct at 0° Pisces in your 6th house. Ending months of delay in work, health, or daily discipline plans. At 0° Pisces, it initiates slow restructuring, how you manage effort, service, and stress. If work has felt draining or overwhelming or unrewarded, this station begins the process of reorganization and recovery. It's the first step toward balance between duty and rest, giving and boundaries. So synthesis for Libra rising will be November functions as an inventory month of resources, goals, and emotional investments. Mercury retrograde asks, what do I truly need? Jupiter retrograde asks, why am I striving for this or that? And the new moon opposite Uranus jolts you awake to what has value beyond money. Saturn direct demands structure in habits and responsibility. This is not a time for expansion, but for consolidation. And by December, you'll see where energy leaks have drained progress and how to rebuild stability in firmer ground. One choice, one honest exchange at a time. Next will be Scorpio rising. November 2025 feels personal and defining. The sky turns its mirror towards you. Every planet shift takes place along the axis of self and relationship, asking you to realign how you express power, truth, and emotional depth. November 9, Mercury stations retrograde in your 1st house, and Mercury's retrograde begins right on your ascendant, turning attention inward. Your words, decisions, and image all undergo revision. You may feel quieter or more introspective, as if the mind wants to retreat before speaking. In Scorpio, this is not surface-level reflection, but a return to authenticity. You are rewriting the script of how others perceive you through truth, not performance. Then November 11th, Jupiter stations direct retrograde at 0° Cancer in your 9th house. Jupiter is lord of your 2nd and 5th houses, so naturally it can bring Dhyana Yoga to the areas that it's traveling through the houses. Dhyana Yoga means expansion, money, and it holds at the doorway of your ninth house, the realm of faith, teaching, and higher vision. This station pulls you toward philosophical or moral review. Are your beliefs aligned with your lived experiences? At Sandy, where one sign dissolves into another, old doctrines fade and a more personal, spiritually story begins to form. November 11, new moon at 4 degrees Scorpio happens in your first house, and it's a beautiful kazemi because Mercury right in the heart of the sun. But we have Uranus and Taurus in opposition. This is a powerful rebirth moment for you, Scorpio. A personal revelation, relationship breakthrough, or a sudden shift in self-definition may occur. Uranus across the sky in your 7th house brings the unexpected through others, through partners, clients, rivals. Yet what appears disruptive is also liberating. The kazemi burns away confusion, a moment of inner clarity when you remember who you are beneath all roles. Now, November 28th, Saturn stations direct at 0 degree Pisces in your 5th house. 5th house is a creativity, children, and emotional expression. And since midsummer, joy may have felt restrained or delayed. All the topics of the 5th house, including children, may have felt the same way, restrained or delay. And now discipline begins to support creativity rather than suppress it. At 0 degree Pisces, the focus moves from control to surrender, learning to trust the process of creation and love. Now, synthesis for Scorpio rising for November. This month marks the reset of identity and purpose. Mercury retrograde invites introspection and careful speech. Jupiter retrograde re-examines faith and direction. New moon kazemi grants a moment of self-realization and renewal. Saturn's direct turn grounds that insight in steady and creative growth. All water signs are engaged, so transformation flows from the inside out. You are shedding an old skin, not through crisis, but through awareness. By December, the path ahead becomes clearer, shaped by deeper honesty about who you are and what you stand for. Next will be Sagittarius rising, and I need to change the battery. For Sagittarius rising, November 2025 moves through hidden terrain, the inner world of dreams, intuition, and unfinished stories. The month's pattern unfolds across the water signs that rule your 12th, 8th, and 4th houses, drawing you inward before major forward movement begins in early 2026. November 9, Mercury stations retrograde in Scorpio in a 12th house. Mercury's retrograde begins in your 12th house of retreat, secrecy, and the subconscious. Also, it's any online projects, connection with online community. It can be startups. But in general theme, this is a time for silence and review rather than external progress. You may revisit private matters, confidential plans, or emotional residues from the past. Dreams, symbols, and intuition carry messages worth decoding. Maybe it's a good time for meditation as well. Avoid making final decisions until clarity returns after Mercury direct motion later on. November 11th, Jupiter stations retrograde in Cancer, and it is your 8th house. Your chart ruler, Jupiter, turns inward at the border of Gemini, and Cancer, right in your 8th house of transformation and shared power. This marks a turning point in how you handle intimacy, finances, and trust. The Sun placement shows an overlap of worlds. Something from the past needs emotional digestion before new beginnings can hold. You may feel called to deeper study, therapy, or research. Anything that helps you process complexity into understanding. New moon on November 11 to 12 at 4 degrees Scorpio, with a beautiful Cazimi and Mercury in the heart of the Sun, but with opposition of Uranus and Taurus. For you, this is a 12-6 house polarity, retreat versus routine, rest versus responsibility. Unexpected shifts in work, health, or obligations may push you to step back and recharge. The Cazimi grants a brief flash of inner vision, an aha moment. You see what must end or be released. A powerful moment to set intentions for healing, solitude, and spiritual renewal. November 28, Saturn stations direct at 0 degree Pisces in 4th house. Saturn direct motion in your 4th house stabilizes the emotional ground after months of introspection. Matters related to home, family, or inner peace begin to move forward again. At 0 degree Pisces, Saturn starts anchoring your sense of belonging, what home means, where you find emotional security, and what boundaries sustain it. This is the quiet rebuilding phase after a long inward cycle. So synthesis for Sagittarius rising will be November acts as a spiritual retreat before a new chapter. Mercury retrograde turns your attention to the unseen and unfinished. Jupiter's retrograde asks for emotional purification and deeper honesty. The Scorpio new moon resets the inner world through rest and reflection. Saturn's direct turn rebuilds the foundation of home and peace of mind. The key theme is release, letting go of control to allow clarity to arise naturally. By late December, when both Mercury and Saturn move forward, but then I need to check the dates to be precise, a fresh direction in life and faith begins to reveal itself, built on insight rather than impulse. The next will be Capricorn rising, and November 2025 reshapes your social landscape and future vision. The month unfolds across your 11th, 7th, and 3rd houses, the realms of alliances, exchange, and communication. You are defining which relationships help you grow and which no longer fit your evolving path. November 9, Mercury stations retrograde in Scorpio in your 11th house, Capricorn. Mercury turns backward in this house of friendships, communities, and ambitions. In Scorpio, this retrograde reveals the hidden motives within groups or collaborations. You may reconnect with old allies, revise professional plans, or step back from certain social circles to regain, again, clarity. It's time to listen more than speak, to observe who genuinely supports you and your long-term goals. November 11, Jupiter stations retrograde in 0 degree Cancer in your 7th house. And Jupiter is ruler of your 3rd and 12th, pauses at the threshold of your 7th house of partnerships. The This marks a reflective stage in one-to-one dynamics, business, marriage, or diplomacy. At Sunday, the tone is transitional. Agreements may need renegotiation. Trust may require renewal. You are learning to balance faith and realism in your approach to others. Also, I need to say something that all these houses, 3rd, 12th, and 7th, are about short to long distance travels. So some topics of that can surface as well. New moon with a Cazimi on November 11th in 4-degree Scorpio. In the heart of the Sun, Mercury, beautiful, but with Uranus in Taurus in opposition. This will ignite the 11th to 5th house axis, shared purpose versus personal creativity. And insight arrives about your place in a group, your creative role, and your future direction. Uranus and Taurus can bring a surprise through a friend, a sudden invitation, or a break from a past. The Cazimi offers a moment of clear vision, an aha moment, the recognition of what community truly resonates with your values. November 28th, Saturn stations direct in 0-degree Pisces, and it is your 3rd house. Saturn, your ruler, turns direct in your 3rd house after months of slow progress. Now communication, writing, and daily organization begin to find rhythm again. At 0-degree Pisces, Saturn blends structure with intuition. You learn to speak with more empathy, to combine discipline and imagination in how you convey ideas. Projects paused since summer begin to move forward, but with greater maturity and patience. So synthesis for Capricorn rising will be November draws a line between old networks and new intentions. Mercury retrograde clarifies social and professional alliances. Jupiter retrograde redefines commitment in partnerships. And the new moon opposite Uranus awakens creative independence. Saturn's direct station reestablishes focus on communication and planning. This is a month of strategic withdrawal, not isolation, but discernment. By December, the people and projects that remain will feel authentic, aligned with the next phase of your ambition and evolution. Stability returns not through control, but through the quiet certainty of purpose regained. The next will be Aquarius rising, and November 2025 brings a serious reassessment of direction, both outer and inner. The key transits move through your 10th, 6th, and 2nd houses, tightening your focus on purpose, duty, and the value of your time. This is not a month of expansion, but of refining what leadership truly means. Mercury stations the retrograde on November 9. Scorpio happens in your 10th house. And Mercury turns backward at the top of your chart, happening in the house of career and reputation. This begins a review period around professional image, authority figures, and long-term goals. In Scorpio, hidden motives or unspoken dynamics at work may surface. Projects require revision, communication with superiors, or the public needs precision. Avoid quick announcements. Wait until December or January to finalize any new direction. Next, November 11th, and Jupiter stations retrograde at 0-degree Cancer, happening in your 6th house, Aquarius. Jupiter, ruler of your 2nd and 11th house, making Dhyana Yoga wherever it goes. and it pauses at the age of Gemini and Cancer inside of your 6th house of labor, service, and health. This is a slow down that asks you to examine how you use energy day by day. Are you working from conviction or obligation? Are your systems sustainable? The Sunday point signifies transition. Old habits of overextension must give way to healthier discipline and routine. New moon, November 11, happens at 4 degrees Scorpio in your 10th house again too. And here Mercury in the heart of the sun forming beautiful Kazimi, but we have Uranus in Taurus opposing this beautiful harmonious picture. This activates the 10-4 house axis, public life versus private foundation. Sudden shifts could arise in career, living situation, or family roles. Uranus opposition signals surprise, but the Kazimi offers a moment of clear insight about your next professional step. A revelation in purpose, not chaos, defines this lunation if you stay centered. November 28th, Saturn stations direct, and it is 0 degree Pisces, happening in your 2nd house, Aquarius. Saturn, your chart ruler, turns direct in the 2nd house of resources and self-worth. After months of limitation, progress resumes, cautiously but steadily. At 0 degree Pisces, Saturn begins to rebuild your sense of material and emotional stability. You start defining value in more soulful terms, what truly sustains you rather than what merely looks secure. Patience is your greatest ally now. Now, synthesis for Aquarius rising. November rebalances ambition, effort, and value. Mercury retrograde reworks your public image and authority role. Jupiter retrograde reviews health, service, and work boundaries. The new moon opposite Uranus brings sudden clarity in professional direction. Saturn's direct motion anchors self-worth and resource management. This month slows your outer progress to restore inner coherence. By December or January, when Mercury clears its shadow and Saturn gains speed, you'll feel a steadier grasp of both purpose and position, grounded, deliberate, and ready for a more sustainable ascent. For Pisces rising now, November 2025 turns into a month of quiet revelation, a pause between belief and proof, intuition and structure. All the major movements occur in water element, your natural domain, and they steer the 9th and 5th and 1st houses, the mind, the heart, and the self. November 9, Mercury stations retrograde in Scorpio in your 9th house. And Mercury turns backward here in the house of higher learning, worldview, and travel. This begins a period of re-evaluating your beliefs, academic goals, or long-distance plans. Scorpio's depth brings questions about faith and motive, why you follow certain ideas or teachers, and whether those beliefs still align with your truth. Travel or legal matters may stall temporarily, giving you space to rethink direction. November 11th, Jupiter will station retrograde at 0 degree Cancer in your 5th house. And Jupiter is your chart ruler, pauses at the threshold of Cancer, right in your 5th house of creativity, children, and emotional expression. The Sun degree shows transition, the feeling that something beautiful is gestating but not yet ready to emerge. It's a reflective time. Return to art, study, or inner joy that once felt natural. What inspires you now may not be loud or public, but deeply sincere. November 11th, new moon happening at 4 degrees Scorpio in 9th house. And we have Cazimi there, Mercury in the heart of the sun, but with a position of Uranus in Taurus. This is a moment of awakening, an intellectual or spiritual breakthrough that shifts your perspective. A flash of insight might change or how you teach, write, or guide others. Because Uranus activates your third house, unexpected news or course or conversation could spark this realization. Saturn stations direct November 28th at 0 degree Pisces, makes the direct motion in your own sign. And it marks a serious turning point in identity and your life purpose. Since midsummer, you've been adjusting to heavier responsibilities. Now clarity begins to replace uncertainty. At 0 degree Pisces, you stand between worlds, one version of self ending, another forming. The months ahead will define your authority, patience, and endurance. But this station gives the first steady footing. So synthesis for Pisces rising will be November weaves a subtle but powerful spiritual and creative renewal. Mercury retrograde in Scorpio invites reflection on truth and faith. Jupiter retrograde reconnects you with inner joy and authentic expression. The new moon Cazimi brings sudden mental or spiritual clarity. Saturn's direct motion grounds a new sense of self and direction. By December, the stillness will have crystallized into certainty. What do you believe, what do you wish to create, and what you are becoming. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next videos. Bye.